I can switch if it gets like a little closer, but.
What a world we live in where
I can switch it.
Cost you the tier. No, and I think that's one thing the method guys know. Won and lost in the first day. If you try to push through a boss really fast, they're going to kill the boss fast. It's not necessarily. I think if they hit raw den and they don't have it dead, you feel that panic start to Il'gynoth. Like that boss looks legitio. That like other guilds had finished this boss in like 20, 30 attempts, and method's still like 50, 60, and everyone's going like. Guys, like this is not this hard of a boss. Like, come on.
It can be really frustrating as well when you're sitting there the same day. I would no doubt expect like Scribe and the other people that are like figuring out the strats.
What a world we live.
Like after the raid yesterday, they took half an hour to really like look through limits attempts and make sure that they have the last few timings and the last few cooldowns kind of sorted out. But it's kind of hard doing while you're raiding, because you kind of feel like, oh, we'll just get there. We just figure it out instead of taking. Maybe sometimes it might be very useful to take a tactical 30-minute break to figure out, well, someone has killed this boss. Right? So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Someone has killed this boss. Especially now they have streamed it as well, so we can see how it is. Our comp might be slightly different. We might have to figure some changes out.
From Method, Rodden died, the boss, and you're like, now that's an interesting change. I wonder, and from so.
down once everyone needed to play the movement. Should hopefully die pretty quick.
Okay. And so Rodin is dead. I assume moving on to Drestagath.
Yeah, to the worm.
And that, based on what we saw from Limit, seems like this shouldn't be too much of a challenge, you think?
I did hear they killed it in Enrage actually, in Berserk.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, considering they killed it
4, or did they actually?
I don't think we've
go
seen
through this?
4 yet.
Yeah.
Well, they've had 4 Warlocks in on this fight, even as
For
of
a
last
while,
night.
yeah.
But I don't think we've seen them bring 4 Warlocks in on a fight before Rodin.
Yeah, I mean, everything about it is just exactly what you want to be doing as a Warlock. You're obviously going to be able to Havoc. You're going to be able to get that damage buff from actually hitting a target when it's over that 80% threshold. You just fry this fight.
Yeah, the ad damage is as I mentioned before, is really, really super important. Being able, at least being able to focus down the void ad. I think the others are a little bit less important. The lightning ad do the chain lightning that you kind of like on Heroic. It doesn't even really do damage, so you just kind of completely ignore it. And then the fire ad or the nightmare ad, we see these fire plumes kind of coming up every now and then. He targets 2 people, and with those fire plumes, and they're gonna follow that person. So that person needs to just start running around, kiting a little bit in a circle or away from you, and that's about it. And it doesn't really take. It depends on who they go. These debuffs go on, but that person will lose a little bit of DPS. But that's about it. So you might actually benefit more raid DPS by just cleaving from the boss. You DPS the boss mainly, and then they just kind of die. You have a lot of abilities that just passive.
I mean, definitely the most important thing in this strategy right now is making sure the Void ad dies as fast as possible. It looks like our expectation is it's going to get 2 of the Void collapses off, and then it should die before the 3rd. With a strategy that relies on RNG, on who that Void collapse targets, you want to make sure that you absolutely, priority number 1 has to be limiting the number of times that you can get screwed by the Void collapse. So I imagine all DPS goes into that Void ad as soon as possible, and then cleave off the boss after that.
I would not be surprised if what we end up seeing is everyone potting, everyone's second potting the first Void ad, and then you end up having, I think it works out the 2-minute cooldowns come back up for the second Void ad. So because each one of these phases is 1 minute behind each other. He starts the phase almost right away with 1. And you do Bloodlust, and everyone pops cooldowns on the pool. You have the first Void ad, and anyone who has a spare cooldown and shorter cooldown would kind of save it for there. Probably would use a second pot. And then for the second Void ad that comes in about 2 minutes into the fight, you would have everyone with a 2-minute cooldown come back up and just being able to annihilate this ad. Because I don't think you'd be able to skip to only get 1 Void collapse, even if everyone uses cooldowns.
That seems like there's definitely enough health left on that ad that you would have to do some really wild stuff to kill it in 1 cast.
So you'd probably still definitely get 2, but you want to make sure that you have the cooldowns out. Just want to make sure that you do a lot of boss damage. And as we saw, we had, I think it was Revis that was dead, for a long period of time on the last pull, and they still hit 40% without having to absorb any of the orbs on the 4th rotation, which is pretty huge, because that means that you're only doing three rotations effectively, and if you can do that actually consistently, what you could end up doing as well is that you have the Void ad in the very first time, which is when you have Bloodlust, and maybe kill it a little bit faster. And then you have the Void ad on the 3rd time as well when you have the 2-minute cooldowns come up. Question is then, if you're investing the both cooldown use, 2-minute cooldown uses as well as Bloodlust to blow up that ad, would you have enough DPS to push the boss fast enough?
For 4th impairment.
I mean, one thing that I want to point out on the back of that, though, with the speed at which they're pulling, everybody in North America is going to wake up before they get another pull in.
Yes. They're just being considerate.
It makes me mauled, bro.
In a stream schedule.
It's how many pulls have they gotten in? They've gotten in 49 pulls. I think we saw before. Obviously, like, they have the full day head start, right? So you look at that full day head start that North America has, and you try to figure out the amount of time that it takes them to do the pulls. It was something like before Method even were able to get onto the boss, I think there were already 60 pulls on the side of Limit. And like you said, I think that's one of the reasons that they were able to get this boss down so much quicker. Obviously, Method has less pulls, but look at the amount of time it did take him to get it. On this particular fight, it's a rhythm fight. Once you get into the groove of it, you're going to be able to slam it pretty hard. It's, you know, you're not joke around. You call this a scripted fight. It is a scripted fight. Everybody in the chat jokes around when they hear the word scripted. But these races, to a certain degree, they have almost started to fit a certain script. Like, Limit comes out, they slam different fights like this super hard. Stuff that's a little bit easier on the threshold, I think, is really where they thrive. They're going to be getting a lot of those early world firsts. And then every time, once we get to that final boss, it seems to be that's where Method catches their stride. But it's so stressful if you are a Method fan to actually watch that. If you are an NA fan, every single time you start believing that this might be the one where they get it.
I was here. Shit.
And the question is it going to follow the script again? Are all of these raiders paid actors? Or... I think that's it. I think that's all I need to say. Are they paid actors?
Well, certainly, I don't want to be reductive, but it does kind of feel like when Method builds a strategy, they always try to build the perfect strategy.
Yeah.
And
even if you don't need it.
Even if you don't need it. Like on some of these bosses, you don't need. You just need a good enough strategy. And it feels like some of these other guilds recognize that like this strategy is good enough for us to get a kill in a reasonable amount of time. It feels like Method pulls it and they're like, it could be better. Let's spend 10 minutes figuring out how to make it better. And it's like, dude, you just do. That's good enough. Like you could kill the boss with this. Go kill it. Then when you get to the final boss, you actually do need the perfect strategy. And so the amount of time that Method spends between pulls is like necessary. You have to come up with, the boss is difficult enough. You have to figure out every little shortcut you can take on the boss to get the kill. And then that pays off. But on some of these earlier bosses, it's just like, just pull again, man. You could have killed this 3 hours ago if you'd have just brute forced it.
I mean, you even see that when you get to the very early bosses, right? You get to your Mauts or your whatever the heck that boss's name. I will never know how to say that boss's name the right way. Is it just Mount?
I think it's just
mouth, dude. It's like mouth, but no.
It makes that doesn't make sense to me. It's like an Egyptian god name.
It is an Egyptian name.
Yeah, but an Egyptian god name would. They usually have like a little bit of a break in them. But speaking of breaks, this break appears to be over. And like we were talking about, yes, we do see Method, even on those early bosses, take a little bit of extra time. They try to figure out those really strong strategies. We see guilds like Pieces even managed to move a little bit faster. Limit obviously was able to move faster, even if it was the day prior. But now we see those fonts of power going off, and we're about to get another pull.
Yeah, we see, like I mentioned before, like they try to, I think, just want to get a little bit closer, but they have no time to precast on the boss here. So,
well, I saw somebody in chat speculate. One of the common tactics you see in like Mythic Plus is you use your like 3-minute cooldowns before you start the key, and then
you
have the 3-minute cooldowns ready again.
Okay.
So I think what they're saying is like the Demon Hunters are metaing, and then they reset the boss, and then they pull the boss, and they'll have like 15 seconds of meta left.
That's true. That's definitely a common Mythic Plus strat.
And it explains, I think, why you get so much value out of an early Lust on this fight if people have, like, in-card.
Noga's going to end up dying here. He's getting all the cooldowns. He actually survives. He got the pain suppression, the barrier as well. So what ended up happening was he was a little bit too close to that circle, and that means that he got the debuff that makes him take 300% damage if he does the mechanic again. But he was also the closest person, which means that he will get the debuff. But yeah, all cooldowns on Nagi. And he's able to survive that without too much issues. He went pretty low, but DKs are pretty sturdy. Otherwise, like from especially when it comes to magic damage.
With this strategy, you can't lose people on the Nightmare and Vita combination. You have to save all your battle reses for the void phases.
Do you get pushed behind a considerable amount having to invest so many healing cooldowns though on an overlap like that?
For single target, I doubt it. I don't know that the tanks need it. And that's, for things like Iron Bark, Pain Sup, well, I guess you don't have Iron Bark, Lol, Leather Healing classes, but Pain Sup, Sack, things like that, I don't know that you are necessarily holding those. Okay, so we lose.
He survived that because he swapped. So what they might end up doing if it's unlike he gets it again now. There's nothing he can do against that.
Collapse.
But what you actually see happening is that the damage is split. So you have another person go in there with an immunity and soak it. So he takes half the damage, and then you put a pain suppression on a person who is not able to solo soak it, and he might be able to survive. So that might be what we saw with the Warlocks as well. They have their really, really good cooldowns, and then you push in a Paladin with a bubble or a Mage, as we saw, because they're very mobile, with an immunity, and that will effectively be a 50% damage reduction on a person who is not able to use an immunity, and then you put a pain suppression on that, and then maybe a barrier as well. So as we're talking about them having to invest that in the very first time, because Naga was a little bit too close, means that they might not have that available for a non-immunity class later on.
Yeah, and just to break that down in simpler terms as well, they're fucking pissed.
Yes. I think you saw a desk slam there.
I heard additional desk slams after the camera moved off. as well. They are very angry.
We should have seen Roger Brown's reaction phase.
I'm sure
to
there
that
I'm sure there
pull.
is one. That might as well be what the replay cam is dedicated to. It's just Roger Brown's reaction to a wipe. But yeah, I mean, this has to be a very frustrating strat for a raid to just pull it and go, please don't be on me, please don't be on me. It was on me, god damn it.
Yeah.
And there's really no, this strat doesn't give you any counterplay. You just roll the dice every time.
It's like it's a very that's the type of moment, obviously, where you are going to be very mad as a player because you do everything that you like to the best of your ability, but you just feel like there is no counterplay. You essentially feel like it's just definitely a tough thing to deal with. Another tough thing to deal with is saying goodbye. We're going to a quick break.
Are you upcasting on the part after this, or?
Yeah, I literally just wanted to sit next to you guys.
I'm
to
not
leech
leaving.
I wanted to
leaving.
sit next to you guys for a little bit to leech some of your five-headed strats. You guys are fantastic. I love getting to hear you guys cast. But get off the couch. We'll be back soon. Welcome back, everyone. My name's Rich. I'm here with Mr. GM. Trekkie and JB just got off the couch. They did a fantastic job casting, and I see you guys talking about Preach in chat. I was actually spent some time talking to Preach last night. We were talking about what time we were actually going to be casting, and I was like, yeah, man, do you think I'm going to be casting Raden still? I was like, I feel like there's a pretty good shot. And he was like, no, absolutely not. I think it's going to go down. And all the reasons that he thought it was going to be down by this time, I think are still pretty valid. I think that we could see this boss go down pretty much at any time right now. And in these future polls, we need to be keeping our eyes on getting into Phase 2.
Yeah, it's that 40% mark that are going to want to be hit to get that 40%. To get to Phase 2, which is basically a burn phase at this stage, I believe. There's obviously a few little bits and pieces that go on there, but a lot of the wipes are caused by just a bit of RNG and a bit of lack of coordination, I guess, in that first phase, because that first phase is so much going on. It's so complicated. I'm sure you guys have been watching for the last couple of hours. I mean, on pool 51 at this point, best pool being 17.8%. But speaking of Trekkie, and he was saying that they haven't consistently been getting into that Phase 2 as of yet, but hopefully, as he said, we should be seeing it go down within the next couple of hours. I mean, they've been on this for, I guess, last night, and then they've obviously come in about an hour ago. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Limit have taken down Raden, they've taken down Drastigath, right? And now they're on 9 out of 12. So, yeah, it's still all to play for. Absolutely, though.
I actually predicted that that Limit may have gotten to 10 potentially out of 12 last night after we did see them get Raden down. I feel like the next couple of bosses are a lot easier, and then on the side of Pieces, they've just been off to a fantastic start. They might even have a little bit of a head start in this fight. We're not 100% sure. They did get here a little bit earlier. That's why we're going to see them in that number 2 slot.
Yeah.
And as far as Method's concerned, I predicted that this boss was going to be a 60-pull boss.
Mm-hmm. So
For Method, though, it's usually a little bit lower. Like, I predicted that for Limit.
Yeah.
Method, usually it's a little bit lower because their pools tend to have a little bit more bang for their buck. They take a little bit more time in between each pool.
Yeah.
But this time around, we're going to have to see if they are going to be able to get it in 60 pools. They definitely want to pick up quite a bit of momentum while NA is asleep, because look at all the catching up that they need to do to complexity. And I think one of the bigger fears, too, that you do have this time around is that ultimately we're not sure how hard Carapace and Ny'alotha are going to be. I do have somewhat of a feeling that Ny'alotha may be one of those Spine of Deathwing-like fights where all of a sudden that last boss just isn't going to be the most difficult thing. But when you do look at difficult things, this boss is definitely going to fall into one of these categories. As you can see right now, the Kill Vistas on your screen, formerly known as the 5th element. Yeah, that orb right here, you definitely want to be killing that this time around. But there is choice. 3 orbs going to be collapsing in on the boss. Originally in Heroic, if you did do it in Heroic, you had 2, and it was a lot easier to actually deal with because you were only dealing with 1 mechanic at a time.
Yeah.
When you do have the 3, it's kind of a compounding difficulty because now you're going to deal with 2, but there are also different permutations that are actually going to roll out depending on which one you kill. You need to be switching absolutely every single time, otherwise the boss will just kill you, and you can see them making those choices at different increments in the fight, so they are getting very comfortable with them. At this point, they do have all their strategies set as to how they are going to deal with these orbs, and the main goal is just making it to Phase 2. Once you do get there, if everybody is up and healthy, it's time to burn, baby, burn.
Yeah, and that's why you're going to see like a 17% pull, because they'll get to 40 and they'll just pump it as fast as possible. And unfortunately, it did get taken down at 17%. But I really do like the missile phase here. I think you see it going off occasionally, and they kind of use interesting use of game mechanics where they go against the wall and they let it kind of bounce off of that. In a few videos that I saw online, they were kind of doing it, I guess, is how it's supposed to be, where you're meant to like stand across from each other.
A lot of the videos online too, just as a heads up for anybody who is watching, are just incredibly outdated on this fight. I feel like this fight is one of the ones that got changed the most from PTR. Obviously, you didn't have 3 orbs for the mythic mechanic, I'm pretty sure, in most of the testing. On top of that, there was a tank mechanic that was completely deleted from the game. And also, the other thing that did happen is is they did a lot of tuning. Like this boss got tuned quite a bit. There was also some mechanics that you could immune that got hot fixed. Limit actually had it down to like 15% before that hot fix went out, and then it went out, and they were actually like, wait, what? And ultimately they were still able to get it down. Right now, this is a little bit scary. You can see some of the cleave going on. They're trying to kite him around the room so the orbs won't go off. They're trying to push into that phase, but ultimately too many going to go down. This strategy, the last time that we did see it, looked very cute. This time it is going to look
Not so cute.
yeah, I'm trying to think of the opposite of cute. Chat, you can maybe help me out. I'm gonna take a sip of my early morning. Also, can we take the Mac thing off? They don't sponsor me. We're not gonna make any jokes about Mac.
The interesting thing I think that I kind of read about was you don't want the orb to hit the boss just as you're transitioning, because you will have to deal with those extra mechanics during Phase 2 as well as the Phase 2 mechanics. But you can see here they have transitioned into Phase 2, and he is currently at 35%, but it is going to look like a wipe. But it is good to see them getting into that Phase 2 straight away pretty much from when we've started going. So hopefully we're going to see that more consistently, and it's just one of those things where, you know, the more you do it, the more you like get into it, and you kind of, I guess it's a muscle memory thing, especially when you're getting into those higher 50 pulls. You know, you're going to be doing it so much that it will drive you mad, but it will be ingrained into your head on how to do this boss.
I mean, this is kind of what we were JB and I were having a discussion about. This is one of those boss fights where if you are in the rhythm, it is significantly easier, I think, to get quicker pulls, get in that rhythm, and get it down. I do think waiting in between pulls on this one seems like the wrong play coming out of Method, but once again, I say that all the time with what I see from them, and it always does end up working out for them. So I do think that comfort is more important than anything. Release Arena, what language is that?
That is, I think it's English with the word Reno at the end.
Interesting. Interesting.
They have been pulling pretty more, like, a lot faster though, honestly. Like from what I've been watching the last couple hours, they've been pretty much getting straight back up and straight back in because, yeah, why not, I guess, which is kind of different. I guess they've kind of got their kind of plan down. It's just a case of getting everything to line up perfectly. Like they're doing a ready chat right now. Could be jumping straight back in potentially.
Oh, it wasn't actually in English. Chat's telling me.
Oh, was it actually in a different language?
No, it was in Papija.
Ah, what's that?
Papija. It's a very easy language to master, actually. Does anybody in Twitch chat speak Papija?
I see it quite a lot. Yeah, they must do. Leave them.
They're all saying, they're all tipping their fedoras. I speak Papija. Top of the mornings, all you Papija speakers in the chats. This is so nice to have you here with us. Definitely helping us get through the pulls. I don't know, there was some guy in chat, too, who just kept typing Tom Cruise. I was like, what? It's like there is no reason to talk about, of all the times to talk about Tom Cruise. Why is now one of them?
So random. Is that like the sperm guy from the other day? Is it the same guy?
You can't just say sperm guy as a non sequitur. You got to be careful there.
Right.
The sperm guy. Yeah, I actually saw him back in chat. He's a cool lad.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a funny dude. You know, every now and then he just hits you with the one-liners like sperm. No, I mean that's the best. I'm not gonna lie. My favorite part of these World First races is chat.
Yeah, they're just so good. Just the best people, always. But yeah, Tom Cruise, that is so incredibly random. I love it. But you know what else I love? I love watching pulls.
The watching method right now is probably not who you want to be watching because their pulls are taking quite a long time. I'm actually curious to see how Preach reacts when he wakes up. I know he said he was probably gonna sleep in pretty late today when I was talking to him. Dude, he's got his whole day planned. Man's a mad genius. He's going to the gym and stuff. He's got his whole day planned out. But he was very confident that we were going to be on that on the boss potentially that looks like a penis. I can't even say his name. It's spelled with a D.
Drestigath?
It's like Dick Breath or whatever his name is.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what his name is, but he was pretty. He thought we were going to be there, maybe even a little bit further, maybe even getting all the way up to Il'gynoth. Yeah. But as of right now, it looks like we could be on Raden for a little while. I think 60 pulls is still a reasonable guess. We're going to know pretty soon once we see a few more of these pulls. I will say a few of the other ones looked a little bit sloppier just because of stuff that was relatively out of their control. As we did talk about, you know, I think they were trying to be quite clever with those mechanics. Maybe came to bite them just a little bit. And now on these next bulls, we will see. So what they do here pretty consistently, as you have noticed, they go for the reset on the boss. They get everybody nice and ready, get anything built up that you need to build up. And on top of that, you're going to get those fonts of power started. And the second that the boss has actually re-instantiated, they're going to have their fonts of powers all the way warmed up, and they're ready to hit it hard with the openers.
That was, yeah, I actually noticed they've been doing that. I wonder if that would actually count as a pull on like Raider IO and stuff. I presume so, right?
It might. I think that our pull counter has been manual. Yeah, so something went wrong there, so they actually do reset it again. I'm actually not sure if Raider IO can detect if it's just a reset or not.
Yeah.
Once again, I will rely on chat for that. But yeah.
No. Just one guy just said no. I think that'll do it, right?
No, like it doesn't count.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this third reset now, but maybe? Oh, well, that's not handy. Okay, yeah, we'll never... Yep. All right, well, we don't know. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. N Omega lol. Raider I know. Yeah, I don't know. It's a mystery. But it looks like we've actually got the official pool now, and they're going for it.
Take questions from chat. Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay, person in chat who suggested that, who probably isn't up to anything unholy. I don't even know what words to use. Yeah, of course. Ask us any question, and we're contractually bound to answer every single one. Go on. Hit us with the questions.
Tom Cruise. How are you? What about that one? Nice and easy.
Do you prefer EU or NA? I think it's a lot more fun to watch NA at the beginning always because they just go faster. Like they straight up, their style is really good for the beginning of a raid. You know, when you do look at EU, I think JB said it the best. They look for perfection in every single boss fight. You don't need perfection even at this boss fight, right? By the time you typically get to the end of the tier boss, yeah, perfection is what you need, and that is when we see Method really take over, really able to grab those world firsts. But when you are looking at some of the easier bosses, like the first three in particular, I think that's where other guilds do tend to shine, and that's why the race tends to be so close.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it was kind of it was cool last time to obviously see Limit jumping in straight away, which was pretty fun. But we do have some NA streamers this time as well. Got Midwinter, who did they stream last night? I wasn't aware.
They did. I mean, the thing was their raid starts like very late as far as local time here is concerned because they're still raiding with their NA hours. So it's pretty reasonable. Thank you. Pretty reasonable that you wouldn't have caught their raid. I'm not sure how it really went as far as like how many pulls it took to get stuff down, but of course throughout the entirety of this race you're going to be able to see all the guilds on the leaderboard. I've been pretty impressed with Midwinter. I typically am impressed with Midwinter, and like I said, it's always the early phases where they really come out
they pushed it. They pumped it on that first day, and it's so awesome to see. I know I think they were saying they obviously raided 12 hours first day, then they're just going to move on to 4, but I mean, do you think maybe in a couple tiers they could be full-time raiding? They could really like get their name out there.
I mean, it's always kind of a question, right? It was a question with pieces. I think Big Dumb Guild has performed very well also. I think they're in a really good environment to succeed too because they're hanging out basically with Limit. So I think I actually caught yesterday that they're learning a lot from Limit. I think that's obviously something that you would want. Something that you don't want, though, in my opinion, is what's going on here. I mean, obviously they're trying to build everything up before they actually do get these pulls. But you had a very quick wipe once they were ready to go. So we've been sitting here getting one pull for, what, 15 minutes at this point? I actually, I'm not even joking. We started at 12:31. They've gotten one pull. They've actually gotten one pull in a half hour. It's just something that you have to bring up. I criticize it all the time. Just doesn't seem like the play here.
Yeah, especially considering they are behind as of right now. Obviously from Limit, who actually obviously got the drastic F down. Apparently they got it down with 12 seconds into Enrage, which is it's a pretty dirty kill, but it's still a kill at the end of the day. Like 12 seconds into Enrage is intense. But it'll be interesting to see when Method do get Raden down and where they go from there, really, and how they do against the, for lack of a better term, like you said, the penis-shaped boss, Drastigath, and then obviously Il'gynoth, which is going to be an interesting fight, and then obviously the mystery of Carapace and how hard that is actually going to be when we get there.
Carapace is, by nature, tend to be quite hard. I would expect, I think Carapace has a shot. I'm not saying it's necessarily like the highest % chance, but it has a relatively high chance to be harder than the final boss. I do think that there's potential that Carapace could be that type of fight. I was talking to even Roger about it actually last night, and we were kind of laughing. It was like me, Roger, Scripe, and we were just kind of laughing. It's like, yeah, Spine to Deathwing. And there's potential for it. Will it happen? It's definitely to be seen. But the other thing that we actually do get to see right now is a pull. For the people who are asking why are they pulling slow, I think they're trying to figure out how they can have pulls where they don't have some of the issues that we saw a little bit earlier with those scary overlaps, with actually having to deal with mechanics after you already have stacks that are going to cause you to take 300% extra damage. But as of right now, the ad finally going to be going down as these orbs do come out, and you can see them all going to just be able to coalesce on the boss, and that's going to create
300. Yeah, it's 300% plus damage when that happens. So obviously in Heroic and Normal, you get 2 orbs. You get the Vita orb and the Shadow orb. So you're saying in Mythic it's 3? So how does that work? Do you have to get 2 to hit it, or are you still only getting 1 to hit
it works functionally the same. So yeah, so he's going to do 2 mechanics, and you do need to rotate as to which one you are going to kill. I see a lot of people though talking. Sorry not to talk about that right now. Definitely going to jump back into it soon. But I see a lot of people asking questions about why Warlock DPS is actually so high. So obviously, we all know about corruption. There are a lot of tuning knobs with corruption. You can sometimes go relatively ham. We've even seen Deep Shades go so heavy on corruption that he, at the very beginning of a fight, gets hit from his thing from beyond and just dies instantly. That was actually back on Xanash. And then you go, okay, maybe we shouldn't have wipes like this. We're going to cool it with the corruption just a little bit. One of the reasons that Destruction isn't even necessarily relying on something like Corruption on this fight and going really heavy, stacking a lot of Corruption and taking your Corruption level all the way to the limit is because by nature, Destruction Warlock tends to thrive anytime you are going to be able to do 2-target cleave. And even though there are a lot of things up during the duration of this fight, it tends to be a 2-target cleave fight. On top of that, you're consistently hitting ads that are on max HP, which is going to give Destruction Warlocks an extra chunk of damage because you hit something above that 80% threshold. It works similar to Twist of Fate, but in the opposite way, essentially. And when you do look at having these Destruction Warlocks, they're bringing 4 when previously I think they were bringing 2 to 3 to most fights. This is definitely a great time to be going heavy on the Destruction Warlocks, and then you're just going to be getting those Chaos Bolts crashing in on those high priority ads.
Yeah, I mean, that burst damage is absolutely insane. I mean, if you look at some of the meters, I mean, one of the last fights that I was watching was like 300 plus on Deep Shades, like 300k DPS, which is absolutely mental. It was absolutely insane, one of the fights. But yeah, you see them always at the top of the meters there, as you would imagine. But I mean, yeah, stacking classes is an interesting thing. I think I remember from Ashara Pieces stacking how many shamans? It was like 10 or something. It was more than that, maybe. They stacked a lot of classes, but I mean, as you said, I mean, we're looking at 5 warlocks?
No,
4.
Sorry, chat misunderstood what I was saying.
Oh, yeah?
Chat, I was referencing a common Shadow Priest skill that thrives when you're going to hit targets that are in a low health threshold, and said the Warlock is the opposite. I'm not saying that Warlocks have that talent, but I totally understand why the way I worded it was a little bit confusing. Sorry about that. I was just trying to make an analogy for somebody who maybe didn't play Warlock, but a lot of people don't play Shadow Priest either. But yeah, no, totally understandable. That's my bad. The other thing that is bad is taking a lot of times between pulls, and you can see that they're not doing that anymore. They did get in here a little bit quicker. I think at this point they do feel like the fight is relatively solved. Very good move. You can see it by the Demon Hunter there. It's nice and easy to deal with it. You're just able to eventually retreat out of it without too much of a problem. You're going to be able to drop that ability. Now, this is one of the ones that was giving them a relatively large headache, though. We actually did see it was Nagi the first time around. He got hit with it, instantly hit with it again. He's taking 300% damage. There's a huge overlap. They had to invest a lot lot of single target healing cooldowns on him just to keep him up, because like we said earlier, you do not want to be losing any players early on here, because the second phase is going to be a huge DPS check. You want to be going in with all of your players available, and now you can see Vita is going to be their target as far as these orbs are concerned as they start trucking on through.
Yeah, exactly. So once that, I believe the Shadow Ball will hit, that brings into the Shadow part of the phase where he'll do the Shadow missiles. It's kind of like, I guess, Javelin, for lack of a better term. That kind of, it fires around. You see that big circle on the ground there. That'll need to be soaked, which will cause the thing to bounce, and you're bouncing against the wall there, because what you'll see is someone else will jump in now and bounce it against the wall once again, so it stays in the same spot, and they will basically rotate that, so that, so that just keeps happening in the corner there. But looking like a wipe right now, but yeah, it's...
you know what else keeps happening?
Oh, yeah, what keeps happening?
They keep dying.
They keep dying. 55 wipes.
I mean, these pulls have been atrocious, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we just call it as we see it. I think that they've had some really solid pulls that could have been kill attempts, and it's just the nature of this fight, right? I don't think that you're super stressed about the fact that a lot of these look terrible. You're going to see this with a lot of guilds. When it goes down, you expect it to be relatively clean, because you can just burn very hard in the second phase.
Yep.
But these have definitely looked rough, Mr. GM.
Yeah, I think... I mean, we've seen a couple I mean, how long have we been on? We've been on like 30 minutes. We've seen one sub 40, and they seem to do pretty well in that phase. It's just keeping everyone alive, keeping as much DPS as you can, and just pumping that boss as fast as possible. What have you found? What they say?
The guy who's typing in chat, Tom Cruise, his name is Tom Cruise Pounds Penguins. So I think we actually found the correlation there. I think that was the thing I didn't notice, is that this guy just
Yeah, there he is.
Tom Cruise Pounds Penguins. Jeez Louise, that's a mouthful there. Well, I hope not. Woo.
Mod that guy.
Yeah, can we give Tom Cruise Pounds Penguins a sword? I trust him. That's exactly the type of freak I want defending me, you know?
At least give him a sub. Oh, that is so good. How? He just said yes. He's ready.
What do you think he's doing right now? You ever like have that moment where you try to get the full mental image? I mean, you stream as well.
Yeah,
You ever have that moment where you try to get the full mental image?
What is this person?
Someone comes in, their name's just like Gotchi Hyper, Summon the Beast, 420696969, and they just come in and say something absolutely absurd. Usually it's a bunch of ASCII things that are configured. It's like some multi-headed beast or abomination. And I'm just like, where are you right now? What happened in your day today? It's always...
It's probably like the first message they've ever sent as well. They just drop that in. And just
well, definitely on that account. Yeah, very very frequently rotating the accounts. I believe the reason there are so many 6-9s is it's actually an identifier for them for how many times they've had to remake their account. 69, a sex number, by the way. Nice. But this pull right now, not necessarily looking nice even at the start. We are going to see the Warlocks able to just chunk this boss. It's so crazy to just see those 8 Chaos Orbs coming in at a time. You have the 4 Warlocks. Havoc going to be out on the ad. Very fantastic class to have even starting things off. But you could see they were relatively scared for a few seconds there. It does seem like they were able to stabilize. And now we're going to be getting into this ball phase.
Oh, yeah, the ball phase. One of your favorite phases, I hear. So they're going to be going for the Shadow Ball first. You have to rotate those, otherwise you don't want them. You basically don't want 2 Shadow Balls in a row because... Oh, no, what happened now?
Nothing.
Okay, you don't want to do the same phase twice because you will get a 300% damage increase, which is definitely not something you ever want. What have you seen? Go on.
Do you like what you see?
Oh, I love it.
Now, here they are going to have to deal with these ads, of course, because every time you do make that decision with which orb you are going to bring down, you are going to have to deal with the other 2 that actually are absorbed by the boss. Yep. And as we mentioned a little bit earlier, you can't just focus on one of those ads. You can't just focus on that because each time you do kill an orb, you then have to make the active decision to work on another orb. Otherwise, the entire raid is going to be wiped.
Yeah, exactly. So we're looking at the Shadow phase, I believe. Yeah, so they got that ad there. That ad needs to be killed as soon as possible. Actually, no, that's not the ad. That's... Wait, what is it? I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Is it another ball? Oh, it's another ball phase.
These,
Right,
these
yeah,
are
I
the
just didn't see the name.
they're going to come out. These balls are going to come
So
at you quick. You got to be ready to deal with these balls, and they are going to do it just fine here. And that's the thing as well. Like as you do mention, like the different mechanics that you're going to deal with. Now it's going to be 2. This is one of the ones that you were actually talking about quite a bit. This puddle that is going to be on the ground. You need to actually get into it, look at it, and it's going to leap, and it actually goes quite far, and that's why they're using the wall.
Yeah, exactly. So you can kind of bounce it over to the wall and just essentially it's like a javelin. It's very similar mechanic to the football kind of the way that works. So it kind of goes in the direction that you're facing, and that's something they're going to be having to deal with. There is also an ad during this phase, or both phases in fact, and essentially the lightning ad is pretty. It will just cast off a chain lightning. You can just cleave it down with the boss. The shadow ad, however, is a little bit tougher. You don't want it to. You got to focus that as soon as possible because you do not want to get at least I think 4 casts off, and it'll be pretty much a guaranteed wipe there. So that is something you need to focus on as soon as possible. And speaking of wipes, we wiped again.
This fight is obviously, it goes without saying, not easy at all. There's so many different points where you can just completely find yourself at a loss for things to do. Once it gets to the second phase, though, it does seem pretty easy. I do think that burn phase is easy. It's definitely the balls that are the hardest.
Yep. The balls are the hardest, it's true. So once you get into that 40% range, you'll see him transition, and we did see that happen earlier on, but I think they were dealing with the balls as well, because I believe if it's the same as Heroic, you do not want the balls to hit just before that 40% range, because you will be dealing with the extra mechanics of the balls while in that second phase, which is just something you don't want to deal with, because you want to pump that boss as quick as possible, because you will... The longer it stays alive during that 40% phase, the worse it becomes for...
I mean, there's so many places where you do have to pump. You got to actually pump the balls, too, here quite a bit. Somebody actually asked in chat, how do I get this off of my screen? And I think they're referring to the overlay. The overlay is a great tool if you do want to be using it throughout the event, but you are also able to hide it. I believe you just double-click one of the tabs, and it should minimize for you. If you do want to use it, though, it's actually going to give you the ability to jump into anybody's POV that you want to jump into. It's going to tell you how much money has actually been raised for Save the Children. Thank you guys for all the donations already. $7,558 already going to one of the greatest charities that I've ever had the pleasure to get to work with on these events. And also, you're going to see the rankings, and you're going to see that, as of right now, Complexity Limit is going to be on the top, even while they are asleep. And that's why everybody in EU is trying to have some strong pulls, trying to catch up to NA before they do wake up. I mean, it's going to be pretty absurd if NA wakes up and Raden is not down for pieces and for method. And with that, we're going to jump into another pull.
Yeah, I think it'll be a definite confidence booster for the guys over at Limit. I don't know what time they finished raiding last night. They did make pretty short work of Drastagath, it seems. So hopefully, I mean, if Method do get Raden down within the next couple hours, they hopefully should as well make short work of the Drastagath and get started work on Il'gynoth, which is a pretty interesting fight. Don't know how many pulls Limit have had on that boss, actually. I'll have to...
On the boss that they're currently working on. I actually did not get to see last night how many pulls. Chat actually might know, but it is one of the... Chat knows.
They always know.
They came up with a pretty interesting... Well, they didn't necessarily come up with this idea, but while communicating with chat via reading all of their 5-headed ideas, I came up with an idea that I really want to do one day.
420 pulls and 69. Oh, well, you got to be a bit consistent here.
420, 69.
Yeah.
420, 69. They know. They know.
Yeah,
I know. Dude, how fun would it be to gachi cast? They keep saying gachi, and I'm like, what's that? And every time I keep looking at chat, I'm trying to read what they're saying, and my shoulder, I'm just like, oh, my shoulder. And I'm looking at chat, and I'm trying to read it, and just every time, I'm just, oh, my shoulder. And then they're like, hands up, and I'm like, I can't. Oh, my shoulder. I try to put my hands up, but here we're actually going to see a very clean ability to deal with that first orb. Now you just need to be getting out of the way. You got to actually solo this area here.
Yep.
You're going to see not too much of a problem there. And also we are going to see that shadow puddle. It's going to be up against the wall. So Melee just going to rotate in that, bounce it back into the wall. It's going to stay in that place throughout the entirety of this ball segment.
Yeah, that is exactly what's going to happen. And then we'll transition into another ball phase where we're going to choose, obviously this was the shadow phase, then the Vita Beatable will be the next one that they have to do next. And here they come. You can see them coming in. They're going to focus on that Shadow Ball because they do not want to hit that. They do not want the ball to hit the boss because it's going to cause them to do that. So they're going to get rid of that Shadow Ball as quick as possible and let that Vita Ball smash right into Raden, as you can see right there. Getting down that ball, perfectly done, absolutely flawless. Everyone's still alive, I believe, and we're looking at the lightning phase. Now, occasionally you'll see that big lightning bolt go across the room, and what happens there is essentially one person will be targeted by the lightning bolt, and that will hit the furthest player away from them. So that will be coordinated. They need to coordinate that as much as possible, and that will rotate as well throughout. I believe the lightning will hit someone else, and then that person who it hit will be the lightning bearer, and then they need to get someone else in there far away because they don't want to hit that twice, essentially. The lightning ball, yes.
Y'all Ren actually said, I believe it was his name, said, I watched the Fat Boss Guide, so if Method needs any help, let me know. The Fat Boss Guide is great, but in the Fat Boss Guide, they do also say that it's not going to be completely up to date because the tank mechanic was completely taken out on the Mythic side of things, and also you don't get to see the additional ball. But Fat Boss, hands down, one of my favorite resources to go to actually learn, even to learn for the first time for Heroic, even to get ready for Mythic. Sometimes you definitely do want to watch them. So yeah, definitely a great resource. But I know you were kind of kidding there, but I do just want to point out on this particular boss fight, there substantial changes from the PTR.
Yeah, and you see that quite a lot. I mean, you saw that with Carapace as well. In Carapace, there was a mechanic where you run up the tentacle, which was really aesthetically pleasing. But I think from a technical standpoint, Blizzard were having some issues with it where Hunter Pets couldn't run up it, so essentially they just scrapped that, unfortunately. But yeah, I think obviously another great resource is obviously the Dungeon Journal. You know, it's a fantastic thing that's been in the game for a while now, just to kind of look in there, see the breakdown of abilities, see the breakdown of the differences between normal, heroic, and mythic, and of course the hardest difficulty of them all, looking for raid. Can't wait for that to release. I'm 3 out of 12. It's been really fun. My my guild have been pumping it. But yeah, currently we can't get any more than that for some reason. Not too sure why. But looking like we're getting ready for another pull once again, and you're reading chat. What do you got? Anything good? Tom Cruise?
Yeah, he's still there. He's still there. I mean, it's one of those times where, I mean, a complete throwaway. As of right now, though, it is close to killing this boss. It's not like they haven't seen all of the mechanics at this point.
Yeah, they've seen everything. That's probably why they're a little bit faster on the pulls, because they're pretty much, I would imagine they're pretty much set on what they want to do. It's just a case of getting it all executed at the same time, because there are so many different things going off at once. It's just a case of just trying to figure it out for the stars to align and everything to go absolutely perfect. But yeah, we're going to see them going into this first phase. That straight away, as you said before, those Warlocks are absolutely going to pump it. The boss is going down super fast before even any of the balls have even hit the thing. They're in the lightning phase now. You saw that lightning bolt, as I said about earlier, going off, and we will see them just trying to focus on the boss while obviously taking down the ad, which is inside the boss, I believe, just there somewhere. They're just going to cleave that down. That's just going to be pumping some chain lightnings, but it's not. It's a pretty inconsequential, to be honest, so it should be fine for them to deal with. Personally, I mean, looking at it from the outside looking in, the lightning phase looks a bit easier than the shadow phase, but you will have to deal with both phases, absolutely. You can't just keep stacking phases, because that would just be kind of silly.
Yeah, so there are a few things, though, as we are going to see another death coming out here very early, which you can't have when you know how much of a race that second phase is going to be. So instantly they are going to trade out that battle res, which they do still have at their disposal. But you can somewhat avoid some of the permutations, depending on how much damage you are going to be able to have to actually push into that last phase. And also one of the other cheekier things that they've been able to do when they haven't met that damage check was just kite the boss so the orbs never hit hit him, then transition him, and you basically save yourself a whole bunch of time there. But once again, Destruction Warlocks are just the heroes of this fight.
Oh yeah, they have just been absolutely incredible, just stacking those up as much as humanly possible. But we're going to look at the Shadow phase now. He's currently at around 62%, so it's looking like a good pull so far. Probably just jinx that, but it looks like everyone's pretty healthy right now. They've got that the javelin or the volleyball or whatever you want to call it, the Shadow Orb, in the by the wall there, and they've just dealt with that absolutely flawlessly. And they've got that ad in there as well that they're just trying to take down the Void Hunter, which will do the Void Collapse, and you don't want too many casts of that. But looking good. It looks like they've successfully got through that phase. It looks like the orb just hit the boss for the second time, so yeah, that might not be good. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. Yeah, so they're dealing with the Shadow Orb there. The Vita Ball is going to hit the boss, so they're going to transition into the Lightning phase, and we will see them having to deal with this now. And I mean, we're probably going to see about 4 or so orb phases before we get into phase phase 2, I would imagine.
Yeah, I saw somebody in chat as well ask, is Limit more geared than Method? I actually talked to Sko about this a little bit, because I thought Method might be a little bit more geared. So one of the very weird dynamics this time around is how corruption does work. You can buy corrupted items on the auction house, particularly the belt and the ring have been kind of the hot commodities. You'll see a good ring. There's like that one ring that's crit haste with a socket guaranteed, and it can be 460 item level. And you can see that with tier 3 infinite stars for like 6 million gold, probably something like that. Yep. And these guys bought them all up on NA and EU respectively. So they're probably going to be relatively even, and their debt is probably going to be relatively even, because they had spent hundreds of millions of gold. There's also a belt that you could get like tier 3 infinite stars on. You can get any corruption on it. So a lot of these guys were able to get the gear to push into something like this quite well. And finally, we're going to have a very clean attempt. Keep in mind, though, that they did have to invest that 1 battle res relatively early. This is the first time that we've gotten into the second phase since we have had about 10 pulls. This is one of the best ones that we have seen this morning, and you got to think that they are ready. They're going to be able to dance out of these void zones without too much of a problem, and the Warlocks are still absolutely pounding on this boss. We are going to have 1 death, though, and we just aren't going to have the battle reses for it. So they are on a huge back foot here. They're going to try to do the most damage that they can. It doesn't even look like this one will necessarily be the best pull that they have had, but still, it's got to feel good to get into that second phase finally. It looks like this is not it.
This is not it, no. But it is a 25% pull, so not too bad at all. And it is really great to see them getting into that phase. You can just see them just completely just pumping that boss as soon as that phase comes in. It's just a case of avoiding the void zones on the floor and obviously healing as much as possible. They did lose a healer pretty early on in that second phase as well, which obviously will not help them. But yeah, we're going to see them res up now and hopefully just jump straight into another pull. But, you know, it is Method after all, so they probably might discuss what went wrong and what happened, but we'll see that very shortly.
I think I actually tried to like look around to see if they were going to go for like a relatively quick pull, and it kind of seems like they're taking a break.
Yeah.
I never understand that. Like with them, I think it's just because they are so comfortable. They will have the best pull ever, and they'll take a break. Like they don't say, "Oh, I want to ride off of momentum." I feel like they are just unfazed by what their recent pulls look like. They are set times probably for breaks. Yeah, we're pretty much right on the hour here. Yeah. So they're probably like, oh yeah, we just got the pull, bathroom break, we're going to relax. I think that's one of the things that allows them to do so well later on. It's not like they're staying up really late any of these nights, and they're going to be consistently just calm, cool, and collected. Maybe that's why they're doing it right now. I would want to just get in there and hit it with another pull as quickly as possible. But guys, I believe we're going to be dumping into a quick break as well while they are taking a rest. But I just actually heard. I'm super excited for this. You guys know I very much do love the lore of World of Warcraft. The reason that I fell in love with lore in the first place is because of this guy's videos right here. I'm so excited that he's a partner of this event. Guys, we're going to be taking a few minutes to listen to what Nobble has to say.
Hello everyone! This video is a continuation upon my Story of the Warcraft universe, the origin video. For those that missed it, in that video we talked about how the Warcraft universe came to be, what the Titans did with the time, and how Sargeras realized that he had to destroy the universe in order to prevent the Void from conquering it. The Pantheon tried to make their champion see reason, but it was already far too late, and as Sargeras went to form his Burning Legion, the Pantheon continued their mission of bringing order to the planets and fighting more nascent titans. Let's begin, shall we? For many years, the Pantheon continued, searching for more of their kin, titan souls to wake from their slumber. Yet despite their efforts, they found none. At times, the Pantheon wondered if their search was in vain, but always they pressed on, knowing deep in their hearts that more world souls did exist, and the Pantheon would be proven right. In the far corners of the Great Dark, a world took form with a titan soul inside, a world we now call Azeroth. Upon the surface of the planet, elemental spirits walked free. You had air, fire, water and earth. Yet the fifth element, the element of spirit, it had been drawn in and almost consumed entirely by the growing titan spirits. Without this primordial force to create balance, Azeroth's elemental spirits fell into chaos, and they were led by 4 elemental lords, powerful beyond mortal comprehension. There was Alakir the Wind Lord, ruthlessly cunning, Ragnaros the Fire Lord, compulsive and brash, Pharazane the Stone Mother, reclusive and protective, and then finally, the wise Neptulon the Tidehunter. These 4 elements waged war with each other, each in turn trying to gain dominion over Azeroth. But victory was not the main goal here. The endless cycle of chaos was what the elements enjoyed most, and for a time, the world was their playground. That is, until the arrival of the Old Gods. Sent by the Void Lords to infect and corrupt planets in the hopes of hitting the jackpot and corrupting a titan spirits. These old gods, Y'Shaarj, Yogg-Saron, C'Thun and N'Zoth, they slammed into Azeroth's surface, tendrils burrowing deep into the world crust towards the defenseless heart of Azeroth. Organic matter seeped from the old gods' blighted forms, giving birth to 2 distinct races. One of them was the cunning and intelligent N'Raqi, also known as the Faceless Ones, whereas the second race was the Aqir, insectoids of incredible resilience and strength. The N'Raqi acted as ruthless taskmasters, putting the Aqir to work to build towering citadels and temple cities around their masters' colossal bodies. The greatest of these bastions, it was built around Y'Shaarj, the most powerful and wicked of the old gods. Before long, the Black Empire would rise and it took control over Azeroth, and of course this did not go unnoticed by the Elemental Lords. For the first time in Azeroth's history, the Elemental Lords worked together rather than against each other. Fire, wind, earth and water, it was all tossed at the minions of the old gods. The elements did incredible damage to their numbers, but it simply wasn't enough. No matter how many of the N'Raqi and the Aqir died, more and more spawned from the old gods' form like larvae from a hive, and in the end, the elementals were enslaved by the old gods. Twilight descended upon Azeroth, and the world spiraled into an abyss of suffering and death. In the meantime, in the depths of the Great Dark Beyond, Agramar continued his mission of eradicating all signs of demonic influence. His battles took him from one world to the other until he sensed the tranquil dreams of a slumbering world soul. He made his way to this world only to discover that Sargeras had been right about the Void Lords and their plans. The planet had been infected, but Agramar believed that the world was not beyond saving. He quickly made his way back to the Pantheon and convinced them to join him in his mission of cleansing the planet. The spirit he had sensed inside the planet, it was mighty, possibly even more powerful than Sargeras, and if it was brought to maturity, it could be a great ally against the Void. On top of that, the Titan spirit was one of their own. It was family, so they had to do everything in their power to save it. For this, Agramar had a bold plan of attack. All members of the Pantheon, they would travel to Azeroth and purge the Black Empire that had claimed it. They would not take action directly, since they feared that their colossal forms and their colossal power, it would do too much damage to the planet, perhaps even kill the world soul inside. So instead, he proposed that they would create mighty constructs to do the fighting for them. Under the guidance of the great forger Kaskarov, they crafted an army of enormous servants from the very crust of Azeroth itself. Titan forged Aesir and Vanir, whereas the Aesir were made out of metal and would command the power of storms, Vanir were made out of stone and they would hold the power over Earth. To lead these Titan forged, the members of the Pantheon also created keepers with their specific likenesses and powers. Aman'Thul gifted some of his vast abilities to High Keeper Ra and Keeper Odin. Kaskarov bestowed his mastery over the earth and forging to Keeper Arcadis. Golganev granted Keeper Thorim and Hodir dominion over the storms and skies. Eonar gave Keeper Freya command over Azeroth's flora and fauna. Norgannon lent a portion of his intellect and mastery of magic to Keepers Loken and Mimiron. And lastly, Agramar imparted his strength and courage to Keeper Tyr, who would become the greatest warrior of the Titan Forged. With this new army molded from the world's crust, the Pantheon went to war against the Black Empire. Led by the Keepers, the Titan Forge slammed into the Black Empire, and in response, the Old Gods called upon the greatest lieutenants, the enslaved Elemental Lords. The Keepers were smart enough to realize that they had to avoid fighting the unified elements, so they decided on a divide and conquer strategy. Tyr and Odin, they confronted Ragnaros the Fire Lord, their metal bodies keeping them safe from the fiery onslaughts. Arcadis and Freya, they took on Pharazane, using the dominion over Earth, the flora and fauna against her. Ra, Thorim and Hodir, they fought with Alakir, using their mastery over the skies and storms, turning the Elemental Lord's own power against him. Then there was Neptulon, who was wise, and he tried to assist his fellow Elemental Lords, yet Loken and Mimiron, they used their wits to outmaneuver him at every turn. With the use of their arcane power and enchanted bonds, they were able to overcome the Lord of Water. The battles were furious, raged on for many weeks, yet in the end, the Elemental Lords were defeated. The Keepers, they knew that they could not simply slay the Elemental Lords, since they were bound to Azeroth and would simply return over time. Keeper Ra followed Sarger's example with the demons, and he decided that instead of slaying the Elemental Lords, they should create a prison for the elements. He requested the aid of Helia, a gifted Titan Forge sorceress, and together they worked on creating 4 interlinked domains within a pocket dimension called the Elemental Plane. This would be their enchanted prison realm. Ragnaros and his minions, they were placed within the Firelands, Pharazane in Deepholm, Neptulon in the Abyssal Maw, and Elakir was placed within Skywall. With the greatest lieutenants, the Old Gods had descended them out of the way. The Keepers continued the war against the Black Empire, and the next target was the Akir. Arcadis bent the stone and soil to his will. He collapsed the Akiri burrows on top of them, and this drove the insectoids above ground. There, the Titan Forge army waited for them to slaughter them all, yet small pockets of these insectoids, even though they were too weak to mount a counterattack, they were able to escape the Keeper's wrath by burrowing further underground. The victories over the Elemental Lords and the Akir encouraged the Keepers, but they knew full well that the greatest battles were still ahead of them. They turned their attention on the temple city built around the old god Yashiraj. He was indeed extremely powerful, more so than the Keepers had expected. He was able to poison the mind of the Titan Forge. He drew out their fears and darkened their thoughts.
I can taste the essence of your soul. It is sweet.
The battle became so dire that the Pantheon feared that the Old Gods would overwhelm their servants. Despite the better judgments, Aman'Thul himself, he reached down through Azeroth's stormy skies and he ripped Yashiraj out of the planet. In that moment, Yashiraj was ripped apart. His death rattle shattered mountaintops and obliterated hundreds of the Titan Forged where they stood. His tendrils had burrowed so deep within Azeroth that volatile arcane energies, the lifeblood of the nascent Titan, it erupted from the scar left behind. In this moment, the Titans understood that they could not risk killing any of the other Old Gods. The Old Gods had emptied themselves so deep within the planet that tearing them out would destroy Azeroth itself. Instead, imprisoning once again seemed to be a much better solution. The Titan Forge, they battled with the Old Gods, and upon defeat, Arcadis created a subterranean chamber to contain them. Mimiron created colossal machines to lock the Old Gods in place, while Loken would enchant each prison to neutralize the Old Gods' evil. N'Zoth and K'Thun fell to their might and were imprisoned, yet Yogg-Saron would not fall so easily. He unleashed the greatest of his generals, the K'Thraxi, monstrous warbringers, larger and far more resilient than any other of the Naraki. They possessed great strength and intellect. Their dark power could drive even the Titan Forge to madness, and at the crack of their whip, the remaining Black Empire was sent into a frenzy. They assaulted the Titan Force on all sides, thinning their ranks, and by the time that the Keepers reached Yogg-Saron, their force had greatly diminished. They no longer had the strength or numbers to complete their mission, but Titan Keeper Odin, he was not about to give up. He summoned his waning strength, inspired them all to launch a counterattack. Loken was commanded to weave a grand illusion spell that forced the Kafraxi to see themselves and even their creator Yogg-Saron as the enemy. With the Black Empire turned upon itself, the Titan Forged moved in for the kill. As they had done with Kafun and Azov, the keepers buried Yogg-Saron beneath the earth, locking it away in an enchanted prison. For the first time in Azeroth's history, a sense of peace settled over the world, but there was still much work to be done. They might have saved the planet, but the Titan spirit inside could use all the help it could get if it was to grow and mature. Not to mention that the gigantic scar left behind when Yashiraj was pulled out, they had some ordering to do. To help them with the mission, the Pantheon gave artifacts to the keepers, known as Pillars of Creation. Now their first priority was doing something about that massive wound on the planet, since they knew that the energies pouring out of it would sooner or later consume Azeroth. They labored day and night, they crafted magical wards around the gaping wound, until eventually the energies calmed down and settled into balance. All that remained of the scar was a gigantic lake of energy that the keepers would call the Well of Eternity. With that immediate threat out of the way, they worked on strengthening the nascent world soul and stabilize its life force. For this, Arcadis and Mimiron, they combined their power to craft the Forge of Wills and the Forge of Origination. These two machines would work together, and together they would infuse Azeroth's spirits with cosmic energies. The Forge of Wills was placed in the northern parts of the world, and it would shape the world soul's early thoughts and perception. The Forge of Origination was placed in the southern area of Azeroth, and it would control the rhythm of the deep earth and fortify the world soul's form. With these two machines created, the keepers continued their work, with Odin overseeing the events with the Forge of Wills. The Pantheon recognized his heroic deeds during the War of the Old Gods, so they appointed him as the Prime Designate. The duty of watching over Yogg-Saron's prison and maintaining the Forge of Wills, that would fall onto him. Now Odin and the other keepers, they began building the great fortress of Ulduar to serve as a main bastion of the Titan Forged on Azeroth. It would contain not only Yogg-Saron's prison, but also the Forge of Wills and any other machines created by the keepers. Besides the purpose of shaping the world soul, the Forge of Wills had another use, which was to create a whole new generation of the Titan Forged. No longer just giants, now they also created the Anubisaf, the Tolver and the Mogu. These beings, shaped from stone and metal, they would help the keepers bring order to the world. As the Forge of Wills under Odin's command did its fingers northward, Ra led an expedition to install the Forge of Origination in the south. With him came a bunch of the new Titan Forged, and as they traveled, they found some of the remnants of Yashiraj. When Aman'Thul pulled him out of the world, some of his body parts fell back onto the planet, and even that was enough to infuse the land with evil. The largest chunk that remained was the Old God's heart, and Ra figured that placing it within a container and guarding it would be the best course of action, since studying it could help them decipher the nature of the Old Gods and other creatures of the void. Ra told some of his Mogu followers to watch over the vault of Yashiraj, while also taking care of the surrounding land. The expedition west carried on, and there they placed the Forge of Origination in the land. The machines were working together just as they had planned, sending healing energies through the heart of the world. A big fortress around the Forge of Origination was built by Ra and his followers, which they called Uldum, and it would become the most sovereign base of operations for the Keepers. Similar to the Forge of Wills, besides fortifying the world soul, this machine had another purpose. In case the world would fall to corruption once again, this machine could be used to unleash incredible energies. Energies powerful enough to eradicate all life on the planet and have it start all over again. Some of the Tolver and the Anubisaf, they were left behind to safeguard Uldum, while the rest of the party they marched northwest into the lands called Silithus, home to Kafun's prison. Ra and his allies, they worked on expanding this prison, building another mighty fortress, and this one they called Ankiraj. With the task complete, High Keeper Ra ordered the remaining Titan Forts to stay behind and guard the strongholds. He himself roamed the southern regions of Azeroth, observing his Titan Forts from a distance and making sure that they performed their duties. With their machines placed upon the planet, the next job the keepers had was reshaping the lands. For this, they had their new generation of servants created from the Forge of Wills, each of them having their own job to perform. There were the Irvin, specialized in crafting mountains and carving out the deep places of the world. The Mechanomes, designed by Keeper Mimiron, charged with building and maintaining the Keeper's machineries. The Mogu, to dig out the rivers and waterways of Azeroth. Stone and sea giants to shape the environment, and to guard all of it, they had two different groups of constructs, the Vrykul and the Tolvir. These creations would walk over the land of Azeroth and shape it to their image. But where there is a world, there is a need for life. This duty fell upon Keeper Freya, and in order to bring about life, she crafted, or she tapped into, a realm called the Emerald Dream. Spirits and strange otherworldly beings populated the dream, a surreal paradise, a mirror image of Azeroth. With that realm created, or that link established, Freya wandered the world, searching for locations where the Well of Eternity's energies had come together. She had found that these locations created the perfect conditions to develop new flora and fauna. Places like Unguro Crater, Sholazar Basin, and the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. She experimented and molded life of astounding diversity, and she seeded it all around the world. The greatest creatures to come out of these areas were the colossal animals, known in the past as the demigods, and now we call them wild gods. Freya loved and adored these wild gods as if they were her own children. They often wandered the land together, forests and grasslands blooming in their footsteps, yet there was one place that she and the wild gods visited more than any other. A massive forested peak called Mount Hyjal. It was on the slopes of Hyjal that Freya bound the spirits of her beloved wild gods to the Emerald Dream. Now you might remember seeing a few of them in the past, like Aviana, Ursak and Goldrin. Those are a few examples of the wild gods. As they continued their journey, they found life forms not directly created by Freya or the other keepers. When they banished Azeroth's elementals to the elemental plane, some had escaped the banishment and they evolved into something new creatures of flesh and blood. A prime example of these were the proto-dragons, which means that not all life on Azeroth was shaped by the keeper's hands. Over time, the keepers and their servants, they were able to form, shape, stabilize and create Azeroth's main landmass, a continent full of plants and creatures of every kind. Twilight fell as the Titan Forge surveyed the world that they had shaped, and they named the primary continent Kalimdor, Land of Eternal Starlight. The Titans were very happy with the Keeper's work, and they knew that the slumbering world soul was in good hands. It was time to travel back into the Great Dark to search for more of their kind, but the discovery of Azeroth, it had shown them that there could be more of them out there. The Keepers left behind were sad that their creators had to go, yet they were also filled with pride at being given the honor of safeguarding Azeroth. Loken and Mimiron, they crafted a set of enchanted artifacts called the Discs of Norgannon, which would be used to keep a record of the history unfolding on Azeroth. Should the Pantheon ever return to the planet, then they would know what happened in their absence. As a final act, before leaving Azeroth behind, Aman'Thul recruited Elgalan the Observer to serve as the world's celestial guardian. He would keep an eye on things, make sure that the planet would not fall to corruption once again, and if there was the need, he could activate a protocol, turning the Forge of Origination into a weapon, which would then purge the world of all life and corruption. The Titans had done everything possible to heal Azeroth and bring the world's soul to be. All that remained now was to wait and hope that the world's soul would one day awaken. They said their final farewells, went about their journey, and this would be the last time that the Keepers would see their creators. But that's the story for another day, since I've been going on for long enough. As always, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos, and until next time, guys. See ya!
So we got to learn quite a bit in that one. We got to learn about Titans, the OG boomers.
Oh,
But I also got to learn quite a lot during that little bit of a break. So one of the reasons that we did take that moment there to watch the lore video was because the actual raiders were taking their break for lunch. They were just scheduled to eat lunch at that time, so nothing was going to stop them from grabbing their food. But I got to talk to everyone. That last wipe, the reason it actually happened, I was like racking my brain. I was like, what on earth actually caused that wipe? So I just asked them, and turns out the man on your screen right now actually was using the staff from Ashara, as you do, and it procced which instantly healed everybody to full. And when you heal to full in that last phase, everybody gets obliterated. That's just how that last phase works. You don't want to heal people to full. So what basically needs to happen is you need to use a macro to like cancel that effect, and they already did know that. It was just human error, right? So it was just the staff that actually killed everybody. Yeah, Keck W is actually fair for that. It is actually pretty funny because it should have been a kill, right?
Yeah.
If the staff didn't proc there, it very easily would have been a kill as well, and or at least the best attempt that they did have. But ultimately, sometimes you got gear that's so good that just wipes your entire raid.
I mean, how many of them are wearing that stuff?
Probably like everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is the staff is really fantastic. This is just one of the times that it does have downside because you can't heal to full during that last phase, which doesn't mean that it's not good in the previous phases, right? And I was talking to Preach about it too. We were both talking to Preach about it. That's the reason why everybody farmed Ashara so late, because you wanted to make sure everybody had that staff, even though that was one of the least enjoyable final bosses that you would farm, right? Sometimes some bosses are fun to farm. That one's definitely not one of the fun ones.
Yeah.
So you wanted to make sure that everybody did have that staff. It's one that carries over from tier to tier. Some people probably aren't using it right now. I know that Warlocks probably want, I believe it's the Carapace weapon, so they probably have that in Heroic, for example. But yeah, it is definitely a strong staff. It's still going to be used. You just need to make sure that you are canceling that effect or swapping the weapon.
Yeah, I mean, the weapon is essentially a non-legendary legendary. It's a damn good weapon. Even on normal mode back in Ashara Progress, people were wanting it. Like, it's a really, really good weapon. And hopefully, I mean, as they come off of break, then they get some pulls in. Once we get into that phase 2, we should be hopefully seeing them taking the kill. That's kind of the plan, I think.
They should be able to get into it again, right? I mean, the thing is they do have that first phase solved. It doesn't mean that there are going to not be any issues getting into it.
Yep.
The issue that we did see in the second phase, if we see that again, it's pretty much unacceptable.
Yep.
It can happen one time when you haven't been in the second phase too much. There aren't too many places where you really should trip in the second phase. And I was talking to Roger, too. He's very confident that this is the day they catch up. The next boss does not look particularly hard. And then after that, the question is, how hard is Il'gynoth? The first thing that Roger Brown actually said about it, too, he's like, is this going to be a fight where we actually use 2 heroisms? He thinks that the fight might
That
actually be that long. I mean, there already was an 11-minute kill in this tier. So, and for people asking how long the break is going to be as far as the Raiders are concerned, I'm pretty sure they're just about done now. They might take like another 10 minutes tops. But yeah, the break's just about done. I'm pretty sure the Noble video was like 18 minutes long, and they were taking a 30-minute break. So their break is going to be over quite quickly here. By the way, I see S-Fan in chat.
S-Fan?
The Mad Lad. Guys, can we get some ones in chat to summon S-Fan right now? Need S-Fan to come on over.
Summon him to Germany. That'd be nice. Where is he at? One's in chat, guys. Bring on the Red Bull.
So the main reason I actually said put ones in chat was because I said heroism, and everybody started making fun of me. So you just gotta clear the chat out right now.
There's just say shaman, right? And they go nuts.
Yeah, but that's actually wrong, right? Like,
no,
heroism is
look,
an alliance ability.
Shaman? No, it's shaman. Come on, boys. Let's be real. Heroism, yeah, dude. I said that in the last race. They lost their mind. They're like, alliance, Dan's game.
I say heroism all the time. Yeah, the PC in a time of political correctness. The politically correct one to say is time warp.
Time warp.
Yeah, you just go time warp across the board. You're all inclusive and it's correct.
That's the Zoomer term.
Yeah. Just gonna pop time warp here.
Time warp.
Can't say any of the fun words anymore. Can't say heroism. Can't say lust. You know the next word I think you're not gonna be able to say?
What do you think?
Rat. I don't think you're gonna be able to say rat soon.
Why?
It's too powerful. It's too powerful of a word. Like if I called someone in chat right now a rat, everybody would go find. It's too intense. It's too intense. And then Quinn's gonna have to change his name, the Rat King. He's gonna have to change it. Yeah, look at that. Rat. Anybody know any rats?
There's a guy. There was a partner guy with the first name Rat.
You're gonna have to change it soon. I'm telling you. 2020, Rat is not going to survive.
Yeah, they renamed it Year of the Mouse.
Oh, is it Year of the Rat?
Yeah, it's Year of the Rat.
Oh, we get to go out with a bang, right? I'm telling you, the word's going to be banned. It's going to be banned on Twitch. They're actually going to pull up this VOD, and I'll be done. I'll be done. But speaking of done, the break might be done because we're finally jumping back into the actual POV here of you see that staff right there? Yeah, that right there. That's the one that killed everybody.
Well done, Mirez. Is that how you pronounce it? Mirez? Is it got an accent above the E? I don't know. Mirez. Yeah, so we're probably going to be seeing them pulling in the next couple of minutes. You know what Method are like. They might.
Break ends in 5 seconds.
Oh, is that what it says? Well, there it is.
Break time's over. Break time is now over. Really quick, though, before we do finish that break, I'm just kind of curious if there are any rats in the chat. Can I get a couple of sevens? Let's see if anybody is actually here.
Sevens.
Yeah, sevens in the chat.
There you go. It's called Ratapie.
Yeah, usually, oh, dude, Ratapie's here. Ratapie's a fantastic PvPer.
Yeah?
Yeah, he's one of the best disc priests in PvP. Look at all these sevens.
Oh, my goodness.
If you actually counted them out right now, it'd be 700 quadrillion, 700 trillion, 700 billion, 777, 7,777,777. It's so nice to see you all here. Look at the rat army rising up. I'm sorry if that was offensive to anybody when I called you guys rats.
God, it gets you. It gets you. Shall we, while we wait, I guess, a minute, we got some donations. Do you want to go through those?
Oh, yeah.
They're all super nice.
Definitely. I actually can't read them, so...
Can you not? Oh, yours broken? Yeah. All right. So we've got one from... oh, dude, I'm so bad with names. Gnarly. It says, go and get world first, guys. Love Heart, $20. Anonymous with 20. Anonymous with 9.95 saying, go Method, get your world first. $5 from Anonymous as well. And I think these are from last night because it says Turkey and Midwinter. But yeah, awesome. And $7,577. We're nearly 48 hours into the broadcast. Obviously, the goal being 25. What did they get last time? Like 60,000 or something insane.
I actually have a really good plan, too, for... I don't know if SFan even knows yet.
Okay.
But SFan and I are going to be doing something special to help raise money for Save the Children.
When are you doing that?
Friday.
Friday.
This is probably the first time that he's heard about it. He's probably like, wait, what? Yeah, look at the question marks coming in from SFan. Yeah, I have a plan, dude. I'm really excited for you to get here. I haven't seen SFan in person since...
You ever seen him at BlizzCon?
I guess BlizzCon may have been the last time.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, oh yeah. We went to Disney World together at BlizzCon. But it was weird. BlizzCon was really weird for me because I hosted MDI and Arena.
Yeah.
So like I didn't even get to see my favorite rat. I didn't get to see Quinn at all. But Esvin and I actually stayed an extra day and we got to go to Disney World. But that may have been the last time that I've gotten to see him. So very excited to actually see Esfan. And also very excited to be raising money for Save the Children. Last time, everybody here knocked it out of the park. I believe it was $60,000 that was earned. This time, we're going to try to pump it up with SFan.
Oh yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. So that's Friday night. Probably, I don't know, pretty late. I mean, we're going to be at the Meltdown party for a bit. It's going to be super fun. I think we're doing some broadcasting there or something.
Yeah. So basically, we're going to be. At the event, which is super fun. If you are in Germany, you can actually come hang out with all of us. And then from there, that's when SFan and I are going to be going back a little bit early. We're going to be coming here. We're going to be doing something special for Save the Children.
Yeah, sounds good.
Whether he likes it or not.
Oh, man. He's scared of coronavirus. You heard of that? I've not heard of that one.
Coronavirus. I keep seeing people talking about it in the chat. I don't know what the big deal is. A lot of people eat meat.
I think that's, you know what, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it'll be fine. He'll be fine. He's a strong lad. He's got a good immune system. He'll fight it off.
Yeah. I mean, hey, dude, let's be completely honest. Both me and S-Fan have been over Asmon's place. We're fine. that builds the immune system up very, very strong. So I'm not worried about S-Fan making his way on down. Dude, and SFan lol W'd. Who lol? They only speak the language of Papija here, which and how you laugh in Papija is just straight kick W's, man. Which I would be doing right now. In my sleep if I was NA when I actually that Method has only pulled 7 times so far. I do think, though, that once we have a pull here, within 5 pulls, it's going down. I think that they've completely solved this fight. The main reason that you want to keep trucking forward here, if you are Method, this is the day that you need to catch up. Tomorrow's the day that you start pulling ahead to actually take the lead. I think is how you look at it. That's usually where it does happen as well. Going into the weekend, they want to be pretty confident that they are ahead because they need to be thinking about the reset, right? It's going to be an injection of fresh loot to NA with the discrepancy in start times that you are going to have between those regions. I believe today is Thursday, right?
It is Thursday.
So the other thing to keep in mind, Asia just started.
They did.
They just got their Mythic Wings open, so now they're also going to be in the race. You need to keep your eyes on them as well. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely the day where you need to, when you are going to sleep, you want to be in second place behind Limit. Yeah. Then tomorrow you want to be overtaking them. Limit, on the other hand, is hoping that they just get through and they're able to blast through to Carapace, because Carapace does look like it's going to potentially be a wall.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had any massive walls. Definitely not to the extent of like a Lady Ashvane from last time so far. I mean, we had a little bit of difficulty on the football boss, not soccer boss, and but they got through that pretty quick. And yeah, the other lot. I mean, Vexy only went down pretty darn quick as well. I think it was 13 pulls or something. But yeah, it looks like the boys are getting ready to go again, and we're going to hopefully see a. I mean, if we get into that second phase, do you think it's going to be a kill straight up?
If they get into the second phase, I think it would be a huge mistake if it wasn't.
Yeah.
Because what happened last time, if anybody just happened to tune in because you saw that we're back actually on the player POVs, first of all, welcome back. Second of all, the reason that wipe did happen in the second phase was completely off the back of that staff that drops from Ashara. Yep. It has a big heal proc, and it went off, which it shouldn't during that last phase, because how that burn phase does work, if you do heal up to full, it kills people. So the proc goes off, it just completely ends up wiping the entirety of the raid. To play around this, because the staff is so strong, and the proc also still good in the first phase, what you end up doing is you have basically a macro to cancel it or to weapon swap. Like, you have a bunch of different options to just make sure that heal isn't going off. It was player error. It caused the entirety of the wipe. It was completely that staff. They still do want to use it here. I think if you see the same player screw up with that staff and not know how to wield that staff, you take it out of his hands and you give him a different weapon.
Yeah, I think so. Just to make sure it just definitely isn't going to happen.
I mean, it's just something that's consistently happened throughout this tier, right? Yeah. You look at Corruption, and there have been moments where Deep Shades, for example, is rocking like 10 billion corruption. Like, it's just such a ridiculous amount. And he has that thing of Beyond running at him, and it caused unnecessary deaths. You look actually back at Xanesh, right off the pull, he gets hit with that thing from Beyond. It trucks him. It just absolutely hip checks him, takes him down. He gets wiped, and then they're just down a player in the entirety of it. And they go, okay, let's go easy on the corruption. Let's cleanse that corruption. Go talk to Mama. And he goes over to Mother. No, he doesn't actually cleanse the item. He just switches an item out. And then they don't have the unnecessary deaths. So they make sure that they're able to just, because that fight's not a race. It's just about putting the balls in the right place.
That's all it is. It's you know, it seems to be the running theme of this raid, putting balls in places. It's something I hear that you enjoy as well. You like putting balls in places during the raiding, don't you? It's your favorite thing.
Yeah, I like to do mechanics. I'm a very mechanical player, so yeah, I was doing the mechanics throughout the entirety of this raid. But yeah, Blizzard's definitely trying to send us a message.
So, what was I going to say? Yeah, so with the corruption thing, I guess you can be kind of selfish and really do, as you said with Deep Shades, like getting really high corruption, which is obviously a little bit unfair to the healers. But it is obviously, if you can handle it, and if the healers can handle it, then you're gonna get a ton more damage. Like, if you're simming like, you know, a ton of infinite stars or whatever, like, you're gonna be doing a ton of damage. But yeah, it's just the negative effects of that corruption that are gonna really mess you up.
In some fights, right? That was why I was kind of bringing it up the same way as the staff.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want to use that staff. The staff is fantastic, but if it's causing unnecessary wipes, it's time to work with something else.
Yeah.
With the corruptions, we've been seeing people actually using so much corruption that their sim is like 120k DPS, and that's not taking into account like like a lot of people are looking at the Warlocks right now and going, oh my goodness, look at the amount of damage that they're able to do. That's not just because of their sheet damage numbers at all. The real reason that they're able to do so much damage is this is a fight that is catered to the cleave that Destruction Warlocks are actually going to have. You're going to be able to get the Havoc out on the balls, and you're going to be able to just slap them with the Chaos Bolts without too much of a problem. On top of that, because there are just continued ads coming out, and there are these continued balls coming out, you are able to just... You keep getting that 80% threshold, so you're getting added damage on top of that. I alluded to kind of Shadow Priest as well. I was talking about the way that Shadow Priest function. It's almost the inverse, right? Sometimes you want to be able to have a lot of ads so you can hit low targets. This time around, you want to be hitting targets while they are high.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ads in this. I mean, you get one ad during the Lightning phase, one ad during the Shadow phase. Obviously, the balls have got health pools as well, which are going to be above 80. And of course, right at that burst at the beginning of the fight, you'll see them knock the boss down straight down to like 80 to 60%, pretty darn quick. You gonna be all right?
Yeah, no, chat just keeps typing this gotchi thing.
Oh.
But they do it in all caps, and it keeps making me look, and I move my... And, my shoulder. My shoulder. Guys, stop in the chat. Put your hands up so you're not typing on the keyboard so much. Oh, man. Whew.
Just stop the chat.
Hands up. Yeah, that's the only way. That's the only way to stop. That's the only way to come down on.
I don't even know what to say to that. Like,
no, you don't have to say anything.
Okay,
just take it, boy.
All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. Someone's fantasy, I'll tell you that much, and I think it might be yours.
Yeah, it definitely is. Definitely is. The Tentacle Palace. It's finally here. I'm really curious to see how some of these later bosses do go, because I do think when you look at Ny'alotha in particular, I feel like Blizzard has kind of been in this constant state right now of being one half a step ahead of the Raiders and tuning bosses before they get there. Raw Den, obviously one that was tuned, made a little bit harder. I feel like it's been just based off of the fact that the way that corruption balancing works, it has been a lot of just trying to make bosses harder. It almost feels like,
they're literally working at the same time. Like, they're looking at the Raiders going, okay, we need to adjust this, like, on the fly. And I know it actually really, like, I saw a load of stuff over on Twitter. I think Max was tweeting about it, about them changing bosses while they're fighting them. Like, that's a bit rough, especially when you have a tactic that you've kind of trying to master, and then they just flip it on its head for, like, and, you've been working on it for 5 hours. It's essentially 5 hours wasted. It's rough. It really is. And I mean, looking back, did they used to do that a lot during raiding? I don't know.
Not like this. There obviously are things that do get tuned on the fly. This time around, though, I totally agree with you. It does feel like pretty much every single time it is happening. But in the same breath, I don't necessarily think it's something that's going to happen again, but it's worked. I think this has been pretty perfect difficulty curve. You had a lot of the bosses that were relatively easy at the beginning. Then you got into those 20 pulls. Then you got into something in the area of 40 pulls. You get to Raw Den. It's in the area of 60 pulls. It's just this steady progression of difficulty. Even if it does look like Blizzard's kind of in the position where it's like, oh, no, I didn't finish my homework really quickly. Let's do this math equation and make sure that the boss is balanced. I think a lot of that is just based off the fact, to their credit, that there is a huge new reward system that allows for absurd amounts of damage. I don't think that it should have been something where you could have it on BOEs, because I think that was a huge injection of power.
Huge.
And, I think sometimes you're just going to have biggest oversights that do manage to slip through. For any of my Dota friends who are in chat right now, you all know about the biggest oversight, but I do think that every now and then they are going to slip in. Speaking of slip in, they're about to slip into this Raw Den fight. I think they will reset it one more time here, just so they can have everything all nice and stacked up. And then after that, we're going to see a pull. You're going to start seeing those fonts of power actually get charged up here, and then we're going to have our first attempt since their break.
Yep, and it's going to be hopefully a good one. Hopefully it jumps straight back in. At the last pull that we saw before the break was one of their better pulls. I think it was around 25%. Obviously, the reason they died was because of that Ashara staff. Hopefully those macros are keybound, and that weak aura has been created for them to take that staff off or stop the ability there. But they're going to have to keep on their toes for this one for sure. But, you know, my prediction, I think we probably might get a little bit of just a kind of teething problem straight off the bat. But then I think maybe 2 or 3 pulls later, we're going to start seeing that consistent phase 2, hopefully.
And for the people who are asking in chat why the resets, they're stacking, right? So they're just making sure that they can stack everything up, hit Font of Power, and they're going to just have the biggest openers that they can have. They just want to make sure in a fight like this that they're having all the DPS that is available to them. And you can see the Warlocks right out of the gate are just going to start frying. It is interesting to see that they're, you know, Rogues aren't necessarily the hottest commodity. I think this is one of the worst tiers for Rogues in a little while. But I do digress as the balls do start to come out. This is when the Warlocks really start to shine based off the merit of Havoc.
Yeah, and here they come. So we've got like 250,000 DPS are going to see these balls going down as quickly as possible. Looks like we've got the lightning phase straight off the bat there. You got that ad going in on Raden. They're going to use that cleave damage, 75% already. Absolutely incredible showing so far. Everybody's still healthy, looking good, and they are going to have to deal with the ads now. And that electric bolt that you just saw there, he's going to disengage to move out of the way. Or is it disengage? No, what is he? He's a druid. God, I'm an idiot. But yeah, so he's going to move out of the corruption ability there as well. You see that big eye. You do not want to stand in that because that is a stacking damage buff. So yeah, with 66% now, we're going into another eye phase, it looks like. And they're going to kill the Vita Orb, which is the electric one, so they can go into the Shadow one.
Every time I see the Vita Orb, I just hear Vistas, the 5th element in my head. But yeah, everything that you said, absolutely crucial. And with the Warlocks as well, people just keep asking about this Warlock DPS. This fight just feels like it was made for Destruction Warlocks because of the fact that they're going to hit above 80% threshold and they're going to be able to bring down these balls so well. Now, an interesting thing here, you can see that shadow puddle that's tucked up against the wall. The reason that they do put it there, it basically jumps, and it jumps pretty far every time somebody steps into it, and it jumps in the direction that they're looking. What they do is they just rotate melee into it as it's up against the wall, and they just push it into the wall so it doesn't move. This is sloppy here. You're already having 4 deaths. This is definitely going to be a wipe.
Yeah.
But we see a lot of this first phase where you are dealing with a lot of these difficult mechanics. And it does push it around 40%. So they are probably 2 more sets of balls that they would have to deal with. And one of the things to note is that final one, depending on the actual timing, they may choose to kite the boss, so they don't even need to hit those orbs.
Yeah, you'll see them kiting around, like when it gets to around 44% or something, you'll see if the balls do come out, they'll kite that boss away from those balls as quickly as possible, because when he transitions, the balls will despawn. If the balls do hit him before they transition, they will have to deal with the phase 1 mechanics during phase 2, which is not something you want to do, especially when phase 2 is all about timing and all about getting as much damage into that boss as possible, because the longer it lives, the worse it becomes for everybody.
Well, it's definitely going to live a little bit longer, because as we know, after each pull, you take a 65-minute break. I saw some people in chat asking me about Dota stuff. I was like, well, you could learn that entire game in the amount of time that we're actually going to have to wait for this pull. But for the people asking about Dota, I'll make one Dota joke, and then I'm not talking about it at all anymore.
Okay.
So, League of Legends player and a Dota player walk into a bar. The Dota player says, Dota's a better game of League of Legends. The League of Legends player can't deny.
Look, I don't get it.
No, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. Just take it, boy. But we are going to be putting our minds back over here onto this boss fight. We expect them to once again reset probably 3 times. And after that, they should have full stacks, and then we'll see those fonts of power. The fonts of power is when you know that it is real, and they're actually going to be working on the boss.
Yeah, but it looks like they are like getting up straight away, like getting ready to go. I don't know if they are getting a little pep talk right now, but I mean, as we said, like it looks like they've pretty much got everything down. It's just a case of getting positioning right, and they know that it is possible using the tactic that they're currently using, which is pretty much it at this point. I mean, they might make a few tweaks here and there, but for the most part, there is a slight element of RNG in there as well with the, I think there's some sort of ability that they have to get out really fast or something like that, and I think it depends on who it goes on if they can, get the positioning right on that, but yeah, looks like we're going to see another pull very, very shortly, and I really, really hate Gingy's transmog. It's the Wendigo thing with the Shadowlands pre-order helm and a Thunder Fury. It's a mage. You see him?
Oh yeah, you get like the Snuggie or whatever
from the Fortnite costume.
What's it actually? It was for the BlizzCon ticket.
Yeah.